Yeah, shalom, everyone, shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the house of the lost sheep of Israel, into the house of Jehovah. And today we see the changes that has happened as we've been going through them. And you can see where the new time slots many of us are in, and as we continually moving forward. And so hopefully you guys can adjust your schedules to where you can join us, the time that we have now. And we have a couple of announcements that are going to be going forth, and we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're going to be doing, because even today, I want to make sure everybody understand today we're going to be going through, once we go into Zoom, we have a couple of important things we're going to be announcing back there. So it's really important that you make sure you be part of that after this lesson. And part of that is where we're going to be doing some things, and where you will see at the same time what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having the children's KJBU. Those will be going on, doing our lessons back there. So that's going to be going on. So you'll see two things going on. So you're going to have a children's class on one side, and then you have our question and answers and also our announcements on the other side. And once they finish, they can join back over. But we're giving the kids the time to where they can have as much time as possible to where they can take care of business there. That's one. Then we got some other things where we got to be speaking on the first fruits, on what's going to be happening in the months to come, as well as it was announced where we're going to be doing blockchains. And as it says up there, there's a reason. There's a 100% reason why any Christian church or any camp to be afraid on what's getting ready to come. And what we're going to be doing is some of that I will be expounded on in the back, but more of it going to be done privately. And then we will be doing it openly. But as it says, these blockchains, there's a reason to be very afraid on what's going on and what's happening. We are moving forward. We are crossing over to the other side, and many of us is over there. We got to keep moving forward based on what's going on, what we're learning, and how we continue to learn the Word of God. So many of you brothers and sisters, you guys look forward to this, and we have all these announcements that's going to be going on, and many important ones going to be later on in Zoom. But I want to make sure that some things that happen, and I'm not favorable, and I'm more disappointed than anything, because even in the women's class, I had from a few people where they was passing documents around, and they were saying to pass those documents as if they written them. And these was distributed out through different deacons and elders. And if I would have seen them, I would have pretty much known. But the main thing is, it's more disappointment when people do that. It shows that you're not willing to study to show yourself approved unto God. That's one. Two, I'm going to be removing myself from that, because I don't see where women look to do something as that sort that's very underhanded. And you learn nothing of doing it. And this is where a lot of people will stumble continually. As same as brothers, some brothers may have done that, but the main thing is, this is not what we're about at all. And when you have any sister that did that sister, whoever did that, and whatever sister passed that to you, that's your actual enemy. I'm just letting you know up front. Whoever's sitting there saying they're going to use that and they're going to pass it around use it as documentation as if you did it. That person that told you that is your enemy. I can care less who it is. I'm just being upfront with you. That's your enemy. That enemy is telling you don't learn. Just pass this on as if you did it. That's the issue. So, same as here. We have this here that we're going to be doing blockchains. So this is going to be very important on what we're going to be doing. So as we move forward, I want to make sure that everybody kick back and make sure you have your pencils and paper ready, because we're going to be doing deep examinations from here out. As I said, we moving over to the other side. We on the other side where we looking at things spiritually. We compare spiritual things with spiritual. We have to hold on to what the truth is. We have to understand what we need to do. And I want to make sure that each and every one of us, we have paper, we have pencils, might need some erasers, but we have to put in work. We have to study to show God that we have put in the work to where we can be looked at, evaluated, to where he can sit there and say, good work, my faithful servant, welcome. That's what we're looking for. So we have to put in work. So I'm asking each and every one to make sure that we're prepared to do these things. And just as I said, a lot of things that you're going to learn here, you're not going to see in other places, because here we actually do work. We actually Bible work. We put in work. So let's get started. We're going to start looking at some things, and we want to get a better understanding on what we need to do. So I want to start here. We want to make sure we start here. We want to look at something. And we're going to start right there at Titus. Titus 1:16. I want you to write that down. Everybody together, write that down. Understand what we're getting ready to do, because we're on Prophetiteering Part 2. But I want everybody to understand we're getting ready to do a critical examination of some profound things. So I want to make sure everybody is ready. And everybody see right here, we're looking at Titus 1:16. I want to make sure everybody understand that. We're going to look at that, and we're going to be doing some other things to make sure that we all on the same page. We're looking at some parables and everything to make sure everything can join together. I want to make sure everybody got that synced into themselves. Titus 1:16. They profess they know God. And you see that's a semicolon. So that's a full thought there. But in works they deny him, being abominable and disobedient, including unto every work reprobate. I want everybody to think about that, because we're gonna run a chain to where we're gonna lock this in to get a better understanding of what we need to do. So how we look at this as we examine this critical principle of Jehovah's law, we're going to examine this, and we're going to understand how to understand the divine truth and protect you, to protect each and every one of you from deception that plagues our generation. So we need to first establish a foundation of biblical instructions. Everybody with me? Are we prepared to go forward? As I said, we're moving forward. We're on a new path. Everybody is prepared to go forth. Let's understand Scripture. Isaiah 28, verse 9. Whom shall he teach knowledge? Whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that is weaned from the milk, drawn from the breast. Jeremiah 3:15. I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. These we understand because Titus 1:16, they profess they know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, in every work reprobate. We need to understand this. Because Isaiah 28 and verse 9, it asks these fundamental questions. These establishes the divine knowledge of understanding doctrine can only be received by those who matured beyond spiritual infancy, but is prepared to receive solid spiritual food rather than elementary teachings. The same we see with Jeremiah 3:15, where Jehovah provides the answer to these questions. He says, I give you pastors according to my heart that will feed you with knowledge and understanding. This truth, this spiritual truth, instructions come through Jehovah appointed teachers, those who possess his heart in the authorization to distribute divine knowledge and understanding to his people. So when we're looking at Titus 1:16, as it says here, this exposes any counterfeit. I want you to understand what I'm saying. This exposes any counterfeit. Why? Because they profess they know God. They profess they know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, in every work reprobate. So this verse reveals those who claim divine knowledge yet demonstrate their conduct that they possess is non-transformable. This non-transformable power that this authentic knowledge of Jehovah necessary that need to produce. So we have to examine this. This is why we have to do it that way. So we're looking at this more in a biblical law platform to where we can get a lot deeper what we need to do. So as we're going to examine the critical principles, we got to understand how to transform the understanding from truth to protect you from deception that plagues our generation. And we are about to go a lot deeper in what we need to do. So I need everybody who have their pencils and paper, I need you to write down something for me. I want you to write down spiritual minus functions analysis. So spiritual functions, or you put functional analysis. Spiritual functional analysis. I want you to write that. Spiritual functional analysis. Write that, put that down, because we're going to be referring to that statement I'm making. We're going to understand it in what I'm saying. Spiritual functional analysis. This is a method in understanding to reveal not just the words say, but they they do in the spiritual realm, and what we're going to do. Many in the past and today have approached these sacred texts through the common literature, reading for information rather than transformation. Everybody follow me? A lot of people read the literature, reading for information rather than transformation, seeking knowledge rather than function. So we look at this, Jehovah's word operates according to spiritual laws as precise, immutable as the laws of physics. So when we look at every divine utterance carries a spiritual function, design, and this divine mechanism that produces specific results and live to those who properly understand and they apply it. So when we're looking at this tragically, in our times, the multitude has been deceived by those who handle the words of Jehovah carelessly. They twist in its meanings, they serve their own purposes rather than discovering divine functions. So what they do, they treat scriptures as raw material for their personal agendas rather than as a finished work of the Almighty. So each word precisely placed to accomplish his eternal purpose. Everybody follow me? We have to stay in this realm. Let's look at something. So we're going to get engaged in what we're doing. Engaging in spiritual function analysis. We ask not just, but we do what we need to do. So what does this verse mean? How does this verse function? Spiritual realm. The divine operation, does it perform? So what spiritual realms does to produce to properly apply? So this method reveals the differences between precepts and living truth. So between practice and spiritual wisdom. We have to consider these things. We have to understand them. Consider how the physician must understand not just the chemical composition of medicine on what a physician cannot do, but its function within the human body. So he must know not just what the medicine is, but what it does. Everybody follow that? When this physician does that, we have to understand that clearly. Just because he seeing what the chemical composition is of the medicine, he has to know what it does to the body. So this interacts with various systems, and it results and produces what effects it creates. So too must we approach Jehovah's word with the functional understanding and recognize that every divine statement operates according to the spiritual laws, produce specific outcomes. Everybody follow me? Stay with me. So this functional approach protects us from what I have named profiteers. Profiteers who have corrupted the biblical interpretation and understanding to serve their commercial interests. So when we understand the spiritual function of a passage, we cannot be deceived by those who twist meanings for financial gain. The word of Jehovah has a built-in protection mechanism, which we're going to be looking at in a little while, that exposes false handlings when we understand the true operation. So as we examine these passages, we got to look at them. And we got to look at the spiritual functional lens. This revealing how truth, divine truth, operates within the believer's heart and life. So as we discover Jehovah's word, it's not just information to be stored in the mind, but it's a spiritual technology that to be activated in the soul. So each verse functions like spiritual programming, designed to produce specific results when properly installed and executed in one's life of the faithful listener, endurer. So we have to prepare our hearts on what we're doing. Prepare our hearts to receive not just knowledge, but understanding. Open your mind to receive not just meaning, but functions. We are about to witness how the word of Jehovah operates as living, active spiritual force accomplishes the purpose in which it was sent forth. So we have to examine the spiritual, functional dynamics of divine truth. Everybody with me? Everybody with me? See, don't sit there and say you understand me. You really don't. Because this is where a lot of people even got lost. So if you don't understand it, just say no. But the main thing is when people saying I and they really don't understand what I'm saying, what's coming out of my mouth, that's why I'll continue to speak the way I do, because everybody's saying they understand me. So we have to understand this in Titus. Look at Titus. It says they profess they know God, but in works they deny him. Being abominable, and disobedient to every good work, reprobate. So we have to key in on something. We have to key in on a few things. In profess, so we're going to break some things down to where I knows to where we can pull them up with us. All the ones whose eyes we got, but the ones who knows, we got to pull them up with us. We can't leave them back there. We have to bring them along with us. So we're going to break down each piece of this. So besides moving forward on other parts, we're going to start breaking stuff down a different way. And when we're looking at profess, I want you to understand this. And each one who all the knows, even the eyes, all the knows, even the eyes, I want you to write down profess. And it functions spiritually as speaking the same word in unison to divine truth. So this establishes the term and what I want you guys to do. Let's start doing this, and we're going to get some understanding. So besides looking at this spiritual functional part, we want to put in this, and I'm going to term this verbal covenant. Profess, that's a verbal covenant. I want you to put that in there. Everybody put that in there for me. Put in verbal covenant. And I don't want you to write this in the chat where you put in profess. I want you to put this on your paper. So I want you to write in there, and on your paper, I want you to put verbal covenant, profess. Next to profess, verbal covenant. Why is people keep putting in profess in there? And I'm telling them not to do that. I don't get that. We need to follow instructions very well. So understand, verbal covenant. So when we're looking at profess, this is a spiritual binding agreement made through public declaration. This is not just a casual speech, but it's a sacred utterance that creates spiritual obligation. So when we understand in this, in the Hebrew language, understanding what this is and what we're doing and what we need to do, this is a Hebrew, he who passed over. This reveals a mouth testimony that invokes a divine witness, making the speaker accountable to the heavenly courts for this alignment between the declaration and then it ties to demonstration. Why do people keep putting in verbal covenant in these things? I don't get this. Put it on paper and stop putting it in the chat. Let's understand what we need to do here. Evidently, people is not paying attention to what I'm actually saying. That's why they keep deleting them. So we have to understand what these covenants are. So when we relate the covenants that functions as an agreement, concord, it's a binding agreement or a promise between two parties. So when we see such statements, as it says in Titus 1:16, it says, but they profess they know God. You see how it's saying that there. They profess they know God. See it. So we understand, but it reveals a little bit more. This reveals that they enter into a covenant relationship which is subsequent in action, either in honor or violates the sacred agreement made through their lips. So the profession creates what is seen as, we want to write this down again, declaration accountability. I want you to put that on your paper and not in the chat. Put it on paper. Then this is how you write that, declaration accountability. Declaration accountability. We have to understand what that is. Because we got to, as we get this is divine truth that penetrates every aspect of being, restructuring through the pattern of emotional responses and behavioral choices. So I need you to carefully listen to me when we concerning knowledge, when it concerns knowledge. Everybody with me? We have to understand something. Know. To know. It gets more important. They profess they know. We want to understand what this is. Know what it is. So know functionally, and it spiritually function as far beyond intellectual acquisition. Why? Because it operates as one to perceive the spiritual inner understanding that produces behavioral transformation. That's why we get ourselves in a lot of trouble. Because we profess we know, and this unleashes the understanding that you should know it, then it produces behavioral transformation, but it don't. So this knowing creates what I'm going to term again, knowledge integration. I want you to put on paper again, knowledge integration. And this where divine truth penetrates every aspect of being, restructuring through patterns of emotion, and these emotional responses, behavioral choices. It functions as understanding, wisdom, perception, this inner understanding revealing that the true biblical knowledge is not informational, but now it's become transformational. So that's why he tells you right back in here, when we're looking at Isaiah 28 and verse 9, whom shall he teach knowledge, whom shall he make to understand doctrine? That's why that kicks in Jeremiah 3:15. I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. That's the point. This revealing true biblical knowledge. So it's critical to identify who's teaching, whose knowledge. So when Isaiah 28 verse 9 it asks that question, it comes only from Jehovah, those who spiritually mature enough to receive it. And as we see Jeremiah 3:15, with to know, it confirms that, because he said, I will give you pastors according to my heart, which will feed you with knowledge and understanding. You see how these are now blending in on what I've been speaking from the beginning. But all the knows, we start understanding more things, because Jehovah himself is the source of true knowledge. So through his appointed teachers, not these self-proclaimed prophetiteers who merchandise divine truth as you see today, true knowledge cannot be purchased from them or from anything. I want you to think about that. True knowledge. Only to receive from Jehovah in the divine appointed vessels. So when we see, again, when we look at Titus 1:16, it says they profess they know God. It exposes the distinction between claimed knowledge. Don't mean that you have it, but it's professing they have claimed knowledge, but then you have authentic knowledge. And they must be understood. Because genuine knowledge of Jehovah functions spiritually like a spiritual DNA in your life. It's right in every code and every existence in a secular level of your being. So this divine knowledge operates like a spiritual programming inside you, transforming every aspect of your nature, your thoughts, your desires, your motives, your actions. Everybody follow me. When you're saying you know God, you know, you follow me. This is what the key is. That's why Titus 1:16 is so important. They profess they know God. So when you profess you know something like that, that's what's going on. So we have to understand this clearly. It's impossible to profess authentic knowledge of the Father of heaven and earth without experiencing fundamental alteration of your character and conduct. You follow what I'm saying? So true knowledge of Jehovah cannot remain dormant or inactive in your life. It functions as a living force that compels righteousness, it demands holiness, and it produces the fruit of the Spirit within you. Everybody follow me? So those encounter who claim to know Jehovah while living in contradiction of his nature reveals they possess intellectual information about God. You follow me? So when they sitting there telling you that, people will tell you they know God. No, they telling you about intellectual information about God, but not the transformational knowledge from God that changes everything about who they are. Everybody get that? I want to make sure everybody is getting that. This is what's going on. So we do these tweaks. We have to do these tweaks as we teach, because we got to make sure everybody is getting everything. So we're looking at this again, and as we go back up in there, because same thing I said, I'm not leaving nobody behind who's here. I'm not going to do it. They're here, they want to learn, let's put in work. Let's put in the work. So let's look at something. But it says they deny. So we want to understand these certain words to where we can get everything together. They deny God. So as they deny him, we want to understand. So deny, I want you to write right on the side, put deny, but it operates spiritually as a contradict by action what is affirmed by lips. Keep that in mind. But in depth of the words reveals a far more sinister spiritual mechanism. In full totality, what I'm saying is, this is not just inconsistency, it functions as an active rejection. But I'm going to explain that. I got to explain this. Because this is where one's lifestyle becomes systematic assault against the verbal profession. They saying they know him, but it's against that. Because that deny is there. They deny him. So spiritually functioning, it creates. Again, we want to look at something else. We want to make this in. We want to write this in there. I want you to write in behavioral nullification. We're going to be looking at these. Put in behavioral nullification. We'll write these down. Behavioral nullification. And this which operates like a spiritual mathematics. A spiritual mathematics we got to look at. Meaning verbal profession minus verbal profession, put a minus sign there, and then put in righteous action. So verbal profession minus righteous reaction. I need you to write that and put an equal sign there. I need you to write that down and then put an equal sign right there. And we're going to move forward because we're going to find out what that is. So when we got verbal profession minus righteous action equals functional denial. Everybody follow me? That equals functional denial. Let's do it a little bit deeper. Let's dig deeper in this. Because we got to understand the deeper reality of denial. It functions as a lifestyle testimony against one's claims of belief. And you see how we tearing this verse completely down to where the goats can get it. We have to. We have to. So as we go with this denial function, as this lifestyle is against one's claims of belief, but someone who denies Jehovah through their works, their daily conduct becomes continuous legal brief filed like in the heavenly court. So it argues against their profession. So every action that contradicts their claim becomes evidence to every decision that opposes righteousness. It becomes the testimony. Every choice that violates the divine law becomes a witness against you. You following me? So the spiritual function of deny. You see it up there, deny. Let me see if I can highlight deny. Yeah, deny, just that alone. It reveals that contradiction is not accidental. You see, this is getting more serious as we go. Getting way more serious as we go. So now it reveals that this contradiction is not accidental, but it's intentional. So it operates as a willful opposition disguised as ignorance. So these individuals, these people who know better, but choose worse. They understand the truth, but practice falsehood. They understand the truth, but they're going to practice falsehood. They recognize righteousness, but they pursue wickedness. Their denial becomes what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to term to where we can understand it a little bit better, to where we're going to go deeper. Put in there conscious contradiction. Conscious contradiction. We'll use that. Conscious contradiction. The deliberate choice to live opposite to their proclaimed knowledge. You follow me? You know I'm setting you up. I'm just letting you know you're being set up. Just letting you know ahead of time, you're being set up. So as we look at this again, they profess they know God, but in works they deny him. Wow. So this establishing the covenant contradiction, the spiritual condition of one's behavior rendered their profession null and void in the heavenly courts now, which is happening because I want you to notice one word that we went over, but I'm going to come back to it, works. Works. You see that's not singular, that's plural. Works. It's serious. And we have to see, and it's telling you when that works is there, it's plural, it's stating it's not isolated, or these are not isolated incidents, but it's a pattern of behavior. Works. It's a pattern of behavior. Systematic lifestyles consistent with choices at all points of the same direction away from Jehovah despite the verbal claim towards him. They profess they know God. So this establishes the actions possess greater testimonial power, that the words in the court of this divine justice, words can lie, but lifestyles cannot. Did you guys catch that? Words can lie, lifestyles cannot. Put that in your pocket. Keep it. Remember it. So professions can deceive. Professions can deceive, but patterns reveals truth. You follow me? Claims can mislead, but conduct exposes reality. Contradictory behavior serves as irrefutable evidence against one's spiritual claim. So functioning as this ultimate lie detector in matters of faith. We're going to prove the point. We have to prove the point. This principle, we want to look at that, the principle. So in the principle, we're going to look at something. We're going to look at two verses to show you the point what I'm talking about. And we're going to look at Hebrews 9:24, and we're going to look at Acts 17:24 to show you what I'm talking about. So it's telling you, in Christ not entering into holy places made with hands, which are figures, these are similitudes of the truth. And as we see, Acts 17:24, but God that made the worlds and all things therein, seeing that he is the Lord of heaven and earth, dwelling not in temples made with hands. This is interesting, because this principle now clearly demonstrated examining modern religious leaders who build elaborate church buildings while claiming they serve the same God that's described here. I want you to keep that in mind, because these verses clearly is irrefutable evidence of a verbal profession. You see what I'm saying now? This is irrefutable evidence against a verbal profession saying they know him. Those who have spent millions on these orated church buildings claiming evidence, leading while directing, contradicting scripture with clear declaration that neither Christ nor the Father resides in buildings made with hands. Their verbal profession states they serve the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, but their righteous actions, or lack thereof to say, reveals they serve architectural monuments on their own glory. You see that? There's contradictions now. They still, remember, they profess they know God, but in works they deny him. So these contradictions become mathematically precise. These verbal professions serving Jehovah minus righteous actions. Everybody follow me now. Now we should get this. We should be getting this now. So building temples he does not inhabit equals functional denial. Their conduct exposes that they either do not believe that Scripture clearly states about Jehovah's dwelling place, or they knowingly contradict it for their own purpose. Either way, we have to understand what we're doing. Either way, their behavior always will serve as a hostile witness against their claims, proving their lack of authentic knowledge of God they profess they represent. So when we have these leaders, these preachers, they stand in their man-made temples proclaiming God's or this divine authority, while Scripture explicitly states that Jehovah or Christ does not dwell in such places. The very location becomes testimonies against their profession, their lifestyle choices to invest in buildings rather than people, in structures rather than souls. It reveals they serve different God than the one that's described in the book that himself. See, a God who apparently needs human architecture to manifest his presence, so these spiritual mechanisms of denial operates like reverse transformation. So instead of knowledge producing righteousness, claimed knowledge produces conscious wickedness. So instead of professing leading to performance, profession becomes a cover for perversion. Instead of verbal alignment, create behavioral alignment. Verbal profession enables behavioral rebellion through false security and religious identity. You see what's going on here now. Hopefully everybody understands where I'm coming from. This reverse transformation manifests most clearly in increased numbers of false religious systems. Claims of divine authority while operating spiritual contradiction. Today there are more than 46, I want to write this down, 46 different types of what men call Christianity. 46 different types, 46 different types of what men call Christianity. But there are over 45,000 different Christian denominations. Everybody follow me? So we have 46 types of what men call Christianity. But we have more than 45,000 different denominations of Christian denominations. So these are movement, cults, faith, belief systems worldwide, all claiming to represent the same divine truth, yet teaching contradictory doctrines and displaying contradictory conduct. You guys follow me? So this multiplication of religious confusion directly violates the spiritual principles that's actually established in Ephesians. I want to show it to you the way we can get it. So we're going to look at Ephesians chapter 4, and we're going to look at this legal documentation. Ephesians chapter 4, but we want to pick it up at verse 5. We're going to look at something. It says, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God. You see how this is going. One God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. You see, this becomes a contradiction. Why? Because now we can see this existence of thousands of competing religious organizations claiming the same source reveal the massive scale of spiritual denial operates through religious profession. So when we look at this proliferation, exposes the term, we got to expose the term, and I'm going to term this again. I'm going to be using a lot of terms because we need the people to get it. And we call it denominational denial. Denominational denial. Understand me? Denominational denial. This is a systematic fragmentation of divine truth to accommodate human preference rather than divine standards. Each denomination essentially say, we profess God or Jehovah. Did you know that? While creating their own version of his requirements, their own interpretation of his character, their own standards of his followers. This creates thousands of different gods while wearing the same name. Now you see what's going on here. You follow me? Let's look at something. The faith recognized as true faith, put it that way, true faith, because I was getting ready to go on another tangent, but I want to stay on this one. True faith. True faith recognizes one God, Jehovah. One faith reveals truth. One belief system, his unchanging law. 1,000s of variations designed to make religion profession comfortable while avoiding spiritual transformation. The multiplication of denominations serves as evidence for humanity's determination to deny Jehovah through religious activity rather than to submit to his singular unchanging standard. It's right there in front of us. So as we see this, I'm going to do a parable to where we can get this, because I had to lead it there. That's why I said I had to change it, stay on course. Because if not, I was getting ready to go on a whole nother tangent. But anyway, we should be in unity of Israel. Jehovah, in this unity of Israel, Jehovah's servant being the light to the world under Jehovah, so the God of Israel. So instead of their existence under chaos, under human interpretation, this denominational explosion proves that religious profession has become a perfect cover for spiritual denial, allowing people to claim divine connection while avoiding divine conformity and profess spiritual knowledge while practicing spiritual rebellion. You guys follow me? This is I'm talking about. This is right here in front of us. Do you see it every day? You have people over. You see it in them. So under the false security of denomination denial rather than authentic relationships with the one true God. I'm telling you, it's right here in front of us. So I was doing that. I needed to change that last part to where I can run you into this parable. I'm going to run a couple of parables to where we can understand something. So let's look at something. And this is a parable of the king, the ambassador, of false advertisement. False advertisement. We want to sit there and see that. And we want to understand what's going on here. False advertisement. To where we can understand it. So we can understand it. So we're going to look at this. In chapter 1, it says the commission of the ambassador. We are ambassadors. Keep that in mind, who we are. So we got a couple of verses that we got to go back, we got to look at, but I want you to understand exactly who we are. So let's read this. And I wrote this parable again. We have some people might try to sit there and they might try to lift out where we got Christians here and they'll try to lift it out and put it in their churches and stuff, but these are written. And if I see that these are written in another way and all of them are copywritten, I will go after a Christian church. Without question, without apology. So I'm just letting them know, without question, without apology. If it's used in a Christian church, I will come after that church without apology for using something where none of my writings is to be used in any Christian church. I do not authorize them to use any part of my parables in any church. Period. So let's look at this. The commission of the ambassador. There was a certain king. I want to sit there. We're going to start right here. There was a certain king whose kingdom was exceedingly rich in wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual treasures beyond measure, and his glory was known throughout all the earth. The king appointed an ambassador to represent his kingdom in the foreign land, and given him authority to speak in the king's name, so in this way, to display his character of the royal court before all people. The king said to the ambassador, "Go forth and represent my kingdom faithfully. Let your conduct be true advertisement of my nature, and all who see you may desire to enter my realm. Remember the pattern of my son." I'm talking about his words, as it is written, "For ye shall know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ," meaning creator of salvation, Jehovah, his word, "that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, that through his poverty you might be rich." And what I did, I used Corinthians, which we got to see to understand this. So as we go through here, we're going to look at this, 2 Corinthians, and we want to look at 8 and 9. Because it's just going to validate what I just said, really. And he says, "For ye know the grace of our Lord," same thing, Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shai the Messiah, or creator of salvation, Jehovah, "that though he was rich, yet for our sakes he became poor, that through his poverty we might be rich." So technically all I was doing. That's all I was doing. And that's what this says. So the richness, this richness is not silver and gold, but the spiritual treasures, which is wisdom. So it's telling you wisdom, understanding righteousness and peace that surpasses all earthly wealth. So we get in chapter 2, we're going to start building on this. And this is the ambassador's false profession. It's going to get into what we're doing with profiteering. That's why we're doing this, but we're playing it another way. We got to understand the parable to get into what we're doing. It says, now when the ambassadors arrived in the foreign land, he proclaimed with a loud voice, I am the representative of the great king. Through me, you shall know his character and understand his kingdom. But the ambassadors, though he spoke the king's name with his lips, lived in manner contrary to the king's character and commandments. When the king was humble, where the king was humble, the ambassador was proud. Where the king was generous, the ambassador was greedy. Where the king served others, the ambassador demanded to be served. The ambassador built himself a palace of gold and declared, behold, remember the prosperity of my kingdom. See how he blessed his servants with earthly riches? But the king's true riches were spiritual. The ambassador displayed was false advertisement in the heavenly realm. So now we got to see this spiritual perjury, all what we've just been talking about. So it came to pass that the people of the foreign land observed the ambassador's conduct and said, if this is how the king's representative live, then we desire not to enter such kingdom. For the ambassador's lifestyle has become spiritual perjury before the divine court. So his works testified against his verbal profession. Exactly what we've been saying the entire time. His conduct operates as character assassination against the king's name, defaming the royal reputation through contradictory behavior. The ambassador's denial went deeper than just inconsistency. It functioned as false advertising of the kingdom of heaven, misrepresenting the king's nature to a watching world. Though he claimed to know the kings intimately, his lifestyle slandered the royal character and perverted the kingdom true values. So with that, we got to understand the true nature of spiritual wealth. And it tells you this here. We got to look at two of them. We got to look at Revelations 2:9 and Philippians 2:7. So let's go here and let's look at them. And we'll see them here. Revelations 2:9. And we're going to look at Philippians 2:7. As he says, I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. We're supposed to be rich in knowledge. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews, they are followers of Christ. They profess they know him, but in their works they deny him. You see, they say they're Jews, but are not. They are synagogues of Satan. There was a building place, but he made himself of no reputation, took upon him the form of a servant, who was made in the likeness of men. You see what's happening there? And these servants were poor in the earthly goods, but rich in spiritual knowledge. You follow the parable. Wisdom and understanding of the king's nature. They lived simply, served humbly, and their conduct was true advertisement for the kingdom, displaying genuine character of the king. And when people saw these faithful servants, they said, now we understand the true nature of the king's realm in his kingdom of righteousness, peace, and spiritual abundance. For these servants knew the king's son. Though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor. You see what's happening now. Yet through his poverty he might be rich, not in silver and gold, but in heavenly treasures, knowledge. So we got to look at this investigation as we go here. I'm naming each one to where we can know them. The king's investigation, we see this. It says, it came to pass, and the king sent investigators to examine how the kingdom was being represented in the foreign land. And when the investigators returned, they reported, O king, Your ambassadors speak your name, but lives contrary to your nature. His palace of gold, and he claims of earthly prosperity, and cause many to reject your kingdom. But your humble servants, though they was poor in worldly goods, have drawn many to desire interest into your realm through their faithful representation of your character. Then the king's wrath was kindled against the false ambassadors, and he declared this man to be committed spiritual perjury in my courts, using my name while defaming my character. And the king commanded that the false ambassadors be stripped of his authority and the false palace be torn down. This is your divine judgment. This is for all ones who teach their falsities. The king declared, who claim to represent me while living in contradiction to my nature, character, assassination against my name, and create false advertising for my kingdom. His lifestyle has become a testimony against his profession. In his works have denied me before the people, though his lips claim to know me. That all understand my kingdom is not of this world, and my riches is not silver and gold, but spiritual treasures is transformation or transform the heart and character. So when we're looking at this restoration and true representation, then the king elevated the humble servants who had truly represented his character, saying, you have understood the true riches come through spiritual poverty and true wealth that come through heavenly wisdom. You have been faithful advertisement for my kingdom, showing that my servants are rich in spiritual knowledge through poor in earthly goods. Continue to represent me, that all who see your conduct may desire to enter my realm for the righteous reasons, not for earthly prosperity, but spiritual transformation. And the people of the land came to understand the true nature of the king's kingdom, though the faithful stewards, servants, who live according to the character rather than those who merely claimed his name. So we got to see these earthly principles. Thus, it was established for those who truly knew the king will represent him faithfully in the word and deed, while those who deny him, though through their works, create false advertising in the heavenly realm. So the spiritual perjury committed not only to the false words, but contradictory lifestyles that defames the character of the Most High. The king's true wealth, spiritual knowledge, wisdom, righteousness, was displayed through the servants who understood the poverty of earthly things often accompanies richness in heavenly treasure. So let us claim and represent the kingdom of heaven, and take heed to your conduct. And truly is either true advertisement or character of the king's nature before a watching world. This is what we have to watch out for in all times, in all things. But we have a lot of people where they look at these men and they have this worldly wealth. Makes no sense. And they telling you, so most people want that, they look for that, they want that stuff. Makes no sense. So these decisions comes to a reprobate. I want you to understand reprobate, because I want you to see that there. We still just on this one part. So it says, in every good work, reprobate. So we have to understand this. We have to understand this in its full understanding on what we got to do, because it functions spiritually as tested by divine fire, but found lacking essential substance. I want you to understand that. I'm going to say it again. When you test it, what it's doing, I don't know why it didn't highlight. Oh, it's still, okay. It's still working. So we have to find out what that is. Actually, it might hold me because I got to get another verse. 1 second, because I might got to get another verse. 1 second. Let me get this other one. Yep, it went out. Okay. 1 second. And let me put that back up. Okay, now we got it. This thing about to get on my nerve in 1 second now. Okay, so what we want to look at is we're going to look at Malachi chapter 3 and pull some information in there. Malachi chapter 3, but we want to pick it up at verse 2 and 3. And why I'm saying it has to be tested by fire and found lacking in substance. So when we look at this, I want you to understand what it's saying. It says, but who may abide in the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. He shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver and he shall purify his sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. It's a profound statement. Profound statement in the Bible. And I'm going to tell you why. Like precious metals that reveal themselves is based when they're subject to refiner's flame, because it's at a real high temperature. And the divine testing process is described in there, right there. You see it in Malachi chapter 3, verse 2 and 3. So when we turn and it's carried the weight of this divine examination for final judgment, it's not arbitrary rejection, but it's systematic testing that exposes internal reality. The same thing, like I was highly upset behind what I seen what some of them sisters was doing. Why? Because I'm going to tie this other one to it to where we'll see it. When you look at 2 Timothy 2:15, it says, study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman needed not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So we see people is willing to lie. That's what the issue is. Because this is a spiritual depth of reprobation, and it reveals the progress of spiritual failure where it begins with inadequate preparation and misdirected attention. So those who become reprobate, those ones who pass it around and saying, use this, they're reprobate. They fail the fundamental requirements that's established in 1 Timothy, in 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to show yourself approved. They pass and they possess the opportunity for divine approval through diligent study and spiritual preparation, but they neglect this responsibility. This is why I have the issue. And people think it's personal, but no, you're showing what your true nature is. So instead of dedicating themselves to study of Jehovah's word, they show themselves approved. They have chosen to feast upon prosperity type gospels, other people teaching earthly gains rather than spiritual transformation. They spend hours of consuming teachings, but financial breakthroughs, material blessings, temporal prosperity, while remaining in spiritual malnourished in knowledge of Jehovah's true character and commandments. It's right there in front of you. So more tragically, many preachers and pastors today have substituted daily world politics through biblical revelations. So they treat current events. They literally treat current events as divine prophecies and political development as spiritual insight. How? The Bible speaks of none of those. They discuss every detail of governmental affairs. People crowd their places because this is what they're going to talk about. Pastors and preachers today, they do it right from their pulpits. They discuss every detail of government affairs, economical policies, social movements, yet remain ignorant to the basic principles of righteousness established in the book of the law from our Father. They have become experts in earthly kingdoms while remaining strangers in the heavenly kingdom. This misdirected study creates not anything good, but I'm going to term this. We got to term this what it is. This is termed as an academic reprobation. Academic reprobation. We're going to use that later. So this condition is being well informed about everything except what matters in divine approval. So they have studied to show themselves approved unto man's political system and prosperity doctrines. But they have failed to study to show themselves approved unto God through rightly dividing the word of truth. Their reprobate conditions consult not the lack of intellectual capacity, but they misapplied the intellectual effort. They possess the same opportunity as approved as a workman, and they invest their time and attention to divine study, but they choose instead to pursue temporal knowledge. Temporal knowledge. And temporal knowledge cannot withstand a refiner's fire, a divine testing. So when the day of examination comes, they will be found experts in vanity. It'll burn up. True ignorance. And then they're preparing for earthly debates, but unprepared in heavenly judgment. So when the day of Jehovah comes, it arrives. It describes this refiner's fire, but those who are reprobate cannot abide in the testing because they lack the essential spiritual substance, which comes only through proper study and application of divine truth. So they are like the silver that appears genuine until subject to intense heat, which exposes the base for material mixed within. This refiner's fire reveals was always present but hidden, absent of authentic spiritual preparation. Reprobate, right up there. Every good work, reprobate. This is interesting. This is highly interesting. Becomes extremely, extremely interesting. Why? Because it offers, and it refers to one who have undergone divine attempt in the process of Jehovah. Test this purity or this authenticity in the spiritual claim. This testing functions like divine examination. Those who have studied to show themselves approved will pass. Those who have been spiritually lazy or deceptive will fail badly. Besides sitting there saying you need help, you prefer to cheat. You prefer to do other things. You prefer not to study to show yourself approved unto God. This is bad. This is bad. Even though I tell you on my wife and throw her up under the bus. She do her own studies. She might ask me a ton of questions. Some questions I refuse to answer because I'm going to make her study. Why? Because I can't stand with her when she stands before God. I cannot be there. He will not even allow me to be there. So I have to sit there and she's saying, you don't love me, I can care less what she say. When you don't love me, you don't care for me, I get that all the time. But one thing I do know, I can't stand in there when she stands before God. So I have to make her study to show herself approved unto God, period. So if her dislike on that part, dislike me on any part, I'm cool with that. I don't have a problem with it. Long as when she get to that gate, he can say, welcome, my good and faithful servant. I'm good. I did my job. I'm not here to be, when we come to the Word of God, I'm not here to be her husband. I'm here to teach her, so she can understand what's going on. So I can care less how she feel about it. I can care less what she think about it. I can care less how mad she can get and say that everybody else will call and I help them and you won't help me. I can care less what she say. I'm not going to change. I'm going to push that. Because I can't afford for her every good work reprobate, where it'll reveal the condition of testing failure. The spiritual state where repeat the exposure of divine truth produces no corresponding transformation. And it'll produce this failure of 2 Timothy 2:15. Can't afford it. And that's the requirement to get into the kingdom. So they neither study nor show themselves approved when the divine examination comes. They are found to be spiritual dropouts who have never completed their preparation. So if you're over here, I can't afford that. So I will push you. This failure manifests most clearly in how men doctrines and engage over debates and matters that contradict Jehovah's established order, such as even defending multiple wives they'll get into. They get into these little stupid social things. Even blasphemy, claiming that God had multiple wives, which is absolutely false. These reprobate teachers reveal their complete failure to study, to rightly divide the word of truth by misunderstanding the fundamental nature of God's covenant in its relationships. So when we're looking at this whole fact of the matter about anything that you want to see established through proper study, it is Jehovah's word only. Jehovah's word only. And he was only married on to Jacob, who he changed his name to Israel. So this demonstrating a singular covenant relationship. See, Jehovah promised Abraham, he promised Abraham who was his friend. He gave Jacob who was a token of that promise. But only Jacob entered into that marriage covenant with Jehovah. Let's look at something. I want to show you something real quick. We're going to sit there and see something. In Romans 9:7, I believe it is, yeah. It says, neither because they are the seed of Abraham, they are children, but in Isaac shall the seed be called. Why? Because it's of a promise. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, Abraham, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise, which is through Isaac, are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise. You see, I keep going back to this promise, and it says, that is, when I come, when I come, and Sarah shall have a son. Not only this, but Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by her father Isaac, who was the token. And children not yet born, neither having done good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, because that's who he decided to marry, not of works, but of him that calleth. And it is said unto her, the elder should serve the younger, for it is written, as it is written, in Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. So Jacob still ended up doing something that was still wrong. He still played the harlot. They never changed. See, because Jacob, he played the harlot through Israel's unfaithfulness as representing the covenant violation, not multiple wives marriages, but regarding the earthly pattern on what he was doing. See, because Leah, who was his real wife, she bore him 6 sons and 1 daughter, makes his 7 complete, representing the completion according to the divine design. The other children came through Jacob's accommodation, and he accommodated this main culture of traditions, having multiple women producing children, wives. Actually, I want to show you something. Let's look at something. I want to show you something. Let's look at something. And we're going to see this. We're going to look at this. Wives. Wives, fruit bearers. That's it. Fruit bearers, concubines. That's all they technically are. Wives. I'm just showing you what wives is. They're fruit bearers. So when we look at this is what happened and what we have to look at. So, which was never Jehovah's original design, but represented human compromise and worldly customs. So those who debate and defend polygamy, or worse, attribute to multiple marriages to Jehovah himself, expose their reprobate condition through their inability to understand basic covenant principles despite repeated exposure to divine truth. Because every time they open the Bible, truth is there. They fail to study to show themselves approved unto God, creating false doctrines that contradict Jehovah's singular faithfulness, nature, and its design for covenant relationship. Their debates over multiple wives reveal they understand neither earthly marriages as Jehovah designed, nor neither heavenly marriages as he has established with Israel alone. You follow me? This reveals the reprobation in the result of failing to meet Jehovah's study requirements. Because as I said, the refiner's fire. It tells you right back here. We're looking at Malachi 3:2. It says, but who may abide in the day of his coming? That should stand when he appeareth. He is like a refiner's fire and like a fuller's soap. He shall sit as a refiner, purifying the silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that he may offer unto the Lord. So this is the issue. They're not going to go past that. They're not going to get past that. Because they literally lied on God. Literally lied on him. So when you have that final examination and separate this approved workman to show themselves a shame failure, those who are reprobate cannot stand when he appears because they never invested in the efforts of study to prepare themselves with the divine scrutiny. They approach this testing, having done only, they really done nothing. A spiritual homework. Consequently, they will fail. They are subject to this divine examination. So the spiritual function of this reprobation, and it exposes not sudden divine rejection, but it's a natural consequence of spiritual negligence. Failure to study, prepare to show oneself approved, resulting into shame, rejection, when divine testing reveals the absence of authentic spiritual substance. So we see this here. We understand what's going on there. And we have to see when we integrate things together. And we got to start putting these things together. We got to put everything and understand what's going on. So we go back and we look at right here again, we're going to go right back to Titus 1:16. And is operating according to the biblical principles. So it says they profess they know God. This is what a lot of us say we do. We know God. But in works, we deny him. So we really lying to ourselves because he see it in our works, which we're going to get into. We're going to understand it. So this functions as a complete spiritual diagnosis system that reveals operating according to the biblical legal principles that governs covenant relationships. So one, I want you to understand one thing, profession. Why? Profession, it initiates what a covenant relationship is through verbal declaration. And what am I saying? They profess they know God. They profess they know God. This establishes what the biblical legal system calls covenant of words. We're just going to dig deeper now. We're going to dig a little bit deeper now. This is covenant of words. This verbal testimony, it creates a binding spiritual obligation before the heavenly courts of justice. This is why we're doing biblical law one-on-one right now. We're going to understand this. This we're going to understand. So the covenant words operates on this fundamental spiritual principle that spoken declaration, it carries divine legal weight in the heavenly realm. So when someone profess they know Jehovah, they are not making a casual conversation, but they are entering into a sworn testimony before the throne of the Almighty. I want you to make sure everybody understand what I just said. What I just said. This is what you enter into. This is anybody who sit there and say they know God and they don't know him. Got many people who will sit there and they're pop shot all around the Bible. Oh, I don't know this, I don't. But you professing you know God and you don't know him. Every word spoken in profession becomes a term, what we would call, and make sure this is clear. It's termed a mouth covenant, a binding agreement that invokes divine witness and creates spiritual accountability. Everybody follow me. We're going to find this out. We're going to find it. We can't get around it. Let's look at something. We're going to go to Matthew. And we're going to go to 12 and 36. Just to get a better understanding. 12, 36, we're going to grab both. We're going to grab two verses. It says, but I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they should give account thereof in the day of judgment. For by the word thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. You follow me now. So this covenant functions according to the principles that's established that's here. That's why you see it here. So one who profess they know Jehovah, those aren't idle words, but the covenant words that will either justify or condemn in the final judgment. You're not getting around this. You're not going to get around this. Let's look at something. I want to pull one more up. I want to lock something in. I want to make sure something locked in. We're going to go to Malachi chapter 3, and I believe it's 16. Yep. And they that fear the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And the book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord in that thought upon his name. You see, we ain't getting around this. So Jehovah, he's not only here or here, but he records what is spoken concerning him. He records what's concerning him. He's going to hold us accountable. Meaning, this covenant creates what we can term. We're going to term things. We're going to call this testimony obligation. Testimony obligation. Now, mind you, this is going to be for every Christian, every whatever you want to call them, who say they actually know God. Everybody going to fall under this. Everybody going to fall under this. Nobody's getting out of this. What this covenant creates, and what we're going to term is testimony obligation. So the spiritual law, and what we see there, this is a verbal profession establishes where divine expectation in corresponding performance, the mouth that declares knowledge of Jehovah becomes legally bound to demonstrate that knowledge through righteous conduct. Now you follow me. So they profess is not just information, but it's transformational. Creating spiritual debt must be paid through the authentic living. So anyone that's still going in there, they still going into these buildings, they still doing this, and they say they know God. They have legal evidence, testimony showing they actually didn't know him. This is why you can tell many of your husbands, your wives, your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, you can tell them when they leave here, you know where they're going. They're going straight to hell. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's in Scripture. So these covenant words function as verbal altars where the speakers offer their testimonies, their sacrifice. Sacrifice is telling you about an established covenant before Jehovah. So like any altar sacrifice, it must be genuine and complete, or it becomes an abomination. So false professions performs as sacred altars, testimonies into spiritual fraud, making the speakers guilty of offering strange fire before the Lord. I want you to stay with me on this. This is why we're going to hold to it. So the covenant operates on the same binding words of the covenant made to Jehovah that he same made with Israel. I want to show it to you where we know what's going on. Because it's no reason to where you're not to know this, because you have crossed over to the other side. Just like I say, if you ain't crossed over to the other side, it's the best thing for you to do is bounce from this channel. Because you're going to be whole for everything that you understand here that you know. Let's look at something. Exodus chapter 24, looking at verse 7, it says, this is the book of the covenant. Read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said, we will do and be obedient. Really, that's interesting. See, because this legal word here, what's going on here, our forefather words established this covenant relationship while corresponding responsibility to children of these Israelites, which is us, who profess knowledge of Jehovah, enter into binding agreements in their lives will reflect the claimed knowledge that you have. This is for each and every one of us. Biblical Law 101. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting, isn't it? Spiritual function realities and what we're doing in these realms, this covenant of words is not broken without consequences. They cannot be broken without consequences. Well, I want you to understand, it creates the divine, this divine. You understand what's going on? It's the divine lien upon the speaker's life. Jehovah holds the legal claim to seed to profess to match with the performance. What you claim, you got to see the performance. So those who violate this covenant, contradictory, face spiritual bankruptcy in the heavenly courts. Testifies against them rather than for them. So I want you to understand the second part of this. 2 of this 4, we got to remember the knowledge. We talked about knowledge earlier, but we're going to go back into knowledge because knowledge shall produce internal transformation, aligning the profession of knowing Jehovah. So true knowledge functions as soul transformation, where Divine truth restructures the entire being according to Jehovah's nature and commands. So spiritual depth of knowledge, when someone professes knowing Jehovah, knowing God, knowing Christ, when someone professes knowing him, far beyond intellectual comprehension, it functions as a term. I want you to write this down. I want you to write it down. Because of what I want to do, I want to show you in a legal heavenly court what's going down. You need to, if you want me as your pastor and I'm representing you, I need for you to understand what's going on. But it's going to be termed as a divine DNA integration. When you saying you profess you know Jehovah, because I'm going to show you what this is going on. And actually, I asked one of my moderators, just put that in there. That's the only one I want you to do, but then I want you to go back to put in the work. But I want you just to write in there, divine DNA integration. So I'm going to go through this again to make sure everybody understands where I'm coming from. So with the spiritual depth of knowledge, when someone profess knowing Jehovah, Christ, God operates beyond this intellectual comprehension. It functions as that term. Divine DNA integration. That's what it's function as. And it's written. I'm going to show you where it's written at, because it's just like I said, we can't get around it. So when we see this in Jeremiah, I'm going to show you why this integration happens. Jeremiah, we're going to look at this. In 31:33, we're going to see this here. Jeremiah 31, we're going to look at verse 33. And it tells you, it says, but this shall be the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. You see, here's the issue here. It says, after those days, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it upon their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Boom, he got us. We can't get around it. Because true knowledge of Jehovah literally rewrites the spiritual genetic codes on believer's soul. So we can't get around it. That's how we get caught up. This knowledge operates according to the principles established over here in 2 Corinthians 3:18. But I want to show it to you so we won't be idle about it. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, looking at verse 18, it tells us something. It says, but we all, with open face, remembering as in a glass of glory of the Creator, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord or the Creator. This is what I want you to make sure of. That's what I want you to make sure of. So this mirrors this authentic knowledge of Jehovah. It functions as a mirror transformation. The soul gradually conforms and it reflects his character through sustained exposure of his nature to his nature. So it's not external modification, but it's eternal reconstruction at the deepest level of being. So these things, what I'm showing you and what we're doing, what we have to make sure we're paying attention to, it pays more closer to it, to everything. Watch what happens. We're going to see this here and we're going to build on this. In 1 John chapter 2, we see this here. 1 John chapter 2, but we're going to pick it up at 3 and 4. And it says, and hereby do we know that we know him, God, if we keep his commandments. Why? He rewrote this on you. He reprograms you to know who he is. This is how we know him. Because we was reprogrammed. This reveals the genuine knowledge that carries the power that we should be knowing. The spiritual mechanism, this progressively transformed the knower into the image of the known. Can't even get around it now. This true knowledge functions as obedience generator. This is how we know him. Why? Because he has wrote it upon our hearts. This is how we know. But he that say he know him and keep not his commandments, in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, every good work, reprobate. Become pretty interesting now. He that say you know him and keep not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. Now we understand this. The spiritual mechanism, it operates through the spiritual describes on what we see also in 2 Peter. I want to actually take you to it. We're going to look at something. 2 Peter actually talks about something even more. 2 Peter 1:4, it tells us a little bit more. And it says, whereby are given unto us exceedingly great with precious promises, that by these things ye might be partakers of the divine nature, key, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. I don't even know what to say there. So when you have this authentic knowledge, it functions as the nature participation, but the soul actually begins to partake of divine characteristic, thinking his thoughts, feeling his emotion, choosing his preferences. That's what happens. That's what happens. Why? Because we now just in the world. We're not part of the world. It tells us that in Romans chapter 12, looking at verse 2. We look at that now, we can understand it because we got rewritten. So be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by renewing of your mind, that ye may prove that which is good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So this knowledge operates as a renewed mind of the entire thought system, restructures according to the divine patterns rather than this human reasoning. These things is there. We understand that better now. So as the same thing, we look at a few other scriptures, we want to sit there and we want to understand exactly what is going on. We have to understand our legal system on that side of the world. In Galatians chapter 2, looking at verse 20, it says, I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. In the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith of the servant of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Exactly the point. Genuine knowledge, Jehovah produces identity replacement. Yet I live by faith. Yet not I live, but Christ in me. Identity replacement. Old self dies and divine life takes residence with the transformational soul. Interesting, isn't it? Israel, when they truly profess the knowledge of Jehovah, you're claiming to have undergone a complete internal reconstruction. This profession carries the weight of testifying the divine truth has written this spiritual DNA, that Jehovah's laws has been inscribed in our hearts and nature. It becomes of his replacement in our lives. So any profession without this corresponding transformation exposes itself as a counterfeit knowledge, just intellectual information about God rather than transformational knowledge from God. So when we're looking at the same thing, when we're looking at denial, they deny him, they say, but the works they deny him. This denial. We have to look at these things, we have to understand what it's talking about. Because when you're saying that there, it says, but works they deny him. This denial, it occurs, its behavior, it contradicts, it claims knowledge of Jehovah, but in works they deny him. This creates a covenant treachery. This is a treachery. When actions function as legal testimonies against one's verbal profession in a divine court, you can't even get around it anymore. So the spiritual depth of denial reveals, it operates on what we're going to do. We're going to hold this and we're going to term this as behavioral perjury. Behavioral perjury. This sworn falsehood, testified through lifestyle rather than lips. You follow me? We see these things now the way we can't get around them. We are built into this web to where we can't not get out of. In Matthew chapter 15 and 8, it says, this people draw nigh to me with their mouths and honor me with their lips, but their hearts is far from me. Interesting. This denial mechanism. They profess they know me with their mouths and their lips, but they deny me in their works. They deny me in these works. This denial mechanism function as heart distance. Gaps between profession and performance exposes this true spiritual location of the individual's allegiance on where it really is. This is bad. This is really, really, really bad. Can you, if we appear, can you stand it? That becomes the question. In James chapter 2, looking at verse 17, it tells us a little bit more. And it says, even so faith, if it have not works, they deny him, is dead, being alone. It's dead. We undergo this dreadful faith, this function as this anti-faith thing, where works actively contradict claimed belief. Spiritual mechanism create what we can all call testimony inversion. These are all legal terms we can get into, where every contradictory action becomes a legal brief filed against one's profession in the heavenly court. Stacks and stacks of papers. It's contradictions that we have built up for ourselves. Isaiah 29:13 speaks even a little bit deeper. It says, wherefore the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouths and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their hearts far from me, and their fears taught towards me is taught by the precepts of men. The precepts of men. This legal weight, we can't get around. This legal weight, we cannot get around. So as I said before, when we looked at that the first time, 1 John chapter 2, verse 4, said the first time. He said he know him and keep not his commandments is a liar. He's going to pour this on each and every person here. Each and every person here. You're going to stand before God. And can you sit as he's purifying you? Can you sit there and what dross he's going to pull out of you? What's going to happen when it comes to you? What's going to happen when it comes to your turn? Matthew chapter 7, verse 16, he tells us a little bit more. He says, ye should know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? So, denial occurs when someone claims to be fig trees, professing they know in Jehovah while consistently producing thorns, behavior contrary to its nature. Consistently. He said this, and I have to show you what he even said. He's highly upset behind this, but I need you to see what his statements, to where we can't get around the statements that he sent us. He says, but they, like men, have transgressed the covenant. They have dealt treacherously against me. This is a legal testimony against each and every one of us. We have dealt treacherously with the Lord. Daily functions of this covenant, deepest level. No accidental failure, but deliberate treachery against binding agreement established through profession. Each contradictory act becomes evidence. Premeditated betrayal rather than inverted weakness. We say we don't do it, and he sat there, and this is his testimony. They have dealt treacherously against me. That's not some prophet saying that. That's his statement. That's the Most High statement. And anyone anyone say they didn't do it, you're calling God a liar. I want you to clearly understand that. Anyone say no, I never did God like that, you just lied. You committed blasphemy, you deserve to go to hell. Reserved there and then cast into the lake of fire. Because he's talking about each and every one of us. We are dealt with him treacherously. We sit there in the building. Don't you ever sit there and you say you was in a church building and you still knew God. Because you didn't. Stop telling the lie. He said he never been in there. So that's why it says, works 89, indicated a systematic pattern, isolated incidents, where spiritual function reveals they now operate through lifestyle litigation, where one entire way of living becomes a legal case argued against their verbal claims in a court that you cannot win. And as your spiritual attorney, I say you go up there and ask for mercy that you have sinned against him. We have no defense. Don't you go up there and, I want to claim something else. Don't you go up there and say that. 2 Timothy 3 and 5. Having a form of godliness. Having a form of godliness. And I'm, as your attorney, I'm telling you out of my mouth, don't you go up there and lie. You just have a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. So the same as I would tell you, from such, turn away. And if you want to go up there and tell that lie, I'm done. You go up there and stand up there yourself. I'm out the game. I'm not going to sit there and lie and try to defend you. This reveals denial operates through religious, active, self-maintaining external godliness while internally rejecting the transformational power that authentic knowledge of Jehovah is necessary, which it produces. So this behavior contradicts the claimed knowledge of Jehovah, and it functions as spiritual perjury on the highest order. And I will not represent nobody who want to sit there and hold to that lie. In fact, get the hell off my channel. Better yet, get the hell off my channel. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for what these people want to do, these little games with God. Individual lifestyle argues against their profession before the divine courts. So they become a hostile witness, testifying whether they claim what they know Jehovah, their knowledge lacks this authenticity where we're looking at the power of divine knowledge that it's supposed to possess. So it shows this main one is reprobation. Reprobate. Results in failed testing, being abominable, disobedient. Telling you all that. This represents the failed testing, the final verdict that exposes everything. The spiritual death of reprobation, it reveals that is termed, I know it's termed as divine as saying, meaning it process that Jehovah tests the purity and authenticity of a spiritual claim. I'm going to show you what it's saying. I'm going to show you what this is saying. Because we can't get around this. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, looking at verse, 1 Corinthians 3, we're going to look at 13. See what it says here. I want you to understand what it's saying. It says, every man, M-A-N, so every male and female work shall be manifest, it shall be made known. For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed. Why? You're going to be checked in the refiner's fire. It's going to be revealed by fire. It's going to be revealed in there. And you think I'm going to stand for you and sit there, well, Lord, let me explain to you. They really good. No. No, Lord, do whatever you got to do to them. They won't stop lying. They will not stop the lies. In the fire of every man's work, of what sort it is. But some people are going to keep telling a lie. Why? They can't help it. They can't help it. Many people is going to bust hell wide that's right here, right now. Why? Because they keep trying to put old things in their own head. The testing, actually, let's look at something. I'm going to show you this testing process. Let's look at something. In Jeremiah, we're going to see something. Jeremiah 27, I believe 27. Yep, I have set thee for a tower, a fortress among my people, that thou mayest know their way, so that thou mayest know and try their way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we here. We got many teachers here now too. They're all grievous. It ain't saying someone, oh well, except my grandmother. No, they are all grievous. Oh no, not my mama. No, they are all grievous. Oh no, not my daddy. No, they are all grievous. Do it say except and put your mama, or daddy, or husband name, or children name there? No, they are all grievous, revolters, walking with slander. They are brass and iron, and they are all corrupters. Their bellows are burnt. They lead is consumed of fire and found melted in vain. For they are wicked, are not plucked away, reprobate. Reprobate. Silver shall men call them because the Lord has rejected them? Really? Reprobate condition, foundry failure. That's what you call foundry failure. Material that cannot be purified no matter what, no matter how intense you make that fire. Reprobate silver. I want you to understand. I'm going to highlight this again. What this is saying here, clearly said reprobate silver. It's telling you foundry failure means you cannot even become purified. You so sinful. You can't even be pure. Why? You so caught up into your own little dumb world. So the consequences reveals that Jehovah's perfect judgment system is distinguishing authentic from counterfeit spiritual claims. Let's look at it. This is us in a nutshell. In Malachi chapter 3, picking up at verse 10, it says, "Bring all ye tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. Improve me now, wherein saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out the blessings," he's going to give some knowledge, "thou shalt not have room to receive it." Benefits of their personal enrichments, though. They want their personal enrichments. Doing teachings in their lavish luxury lifestyles contradicts the very humility and contentment in Scripture contained. Like, actually, let me show you one. I'll show you one. Keep running. In 1 Timothy chapter 6:6. 1 Timothy 6:6. It tells us, "But godliness is contentment, is great gain. For we have brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. Having food and raiment, let us be therewith content." No, I need more. No, I need more. This is our issue. This is what we go through. This is what we go through. See, the position in life to be followed. We have to understand what you receive from God, you get from God. We follow order. He's the God of order. See, the same thing like I told people before, a lot of people didn't like it, but just truth is what it is. The same thing like a lot of women. A lot of women, why you probably have, why they had such a burning desire. Don't you know more women is not going to the kingdom based on their behavior, based on their mindset? Did you know that? More women will not see the kingdom based on that alone. Why? Women always seek to run the household. They want to run over their husbands. Alone. So if you can't even sit there and follow order, actually I'm going to show it to you. Let me show it to you. Let's go to Ephesians 5:23. It says, for the husband is head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church. Here's the problem. Women showing the same thing. Women, females, women with their spirits, they want to run the house. You hear it. Oh, happy wife, happy life. You hear that. They always want to run the man. The head of the husband is the wife. The husband is the head of the wife. But the same thing is, the reason why so many women won't make it, because as soon as they get to heaven, don't think they won't try that with God. Because that's what's in their heart. They're going to sit there and they're going to call themselves, well, I'm here now. I'm going to make suggestions to God. Now I'm going to make suggestions to him. How do I know that? You do it here. A happy wife, happy life. Look how many women right now call themselves, they running the house. I run this house. Whole lot of y'all not gonna make it on that alone. Why? You don't even know how to do the order. These women, they seek this thing and they seek control, and then when they get to heaven, then they gonna seek to run heaven. Their rebellion is against divine order, even in their earthly rejection to this divine structure of a marriage. So it already established a hierarchy, but they cannot even submit to Jehovah himself. Why? They sure they can't even submit to their husbands. You ain't telling them tie my shoe to them. There ain't none of that. You can't even submit to your husband. You can't even do, your husband can sit there and ask you something, you're going to do it with a poked out lip or do it. Who are you? Who do you think you are? These contradictions expose what we call systematic hypocrisy. And it represents order rebellion. This is the problem that we have today. See, when we're looking at this hypocrisy, we see teaching even of financial matters where it's practicing financial access. Someone whose rebellious women claim spiritual authority by rejecting even the order of Jehovah on how he did. Why? Because this is what happened. I'm going to show you something. Just showing it to you. In Matthew chapter 23, looking at verse 4, it tells us, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne and lay on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move not one of their fingers. See, they say this talking about Pharisees. Yeah, this talking about you. This talking about women who won't do anything. They're going to bear all these heavy burdens on you. Well, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. You need to be doing this. What you going to do? I ain't doing nothing. I'm the prize. Really? That's interesting. How are you the prize? I'm the prize. You the prize. Okay, what make you the prize? Because I'm the prize. Reprobate. Reprobate. And then what they do, through Scripture, they manipulate the Scripture, using Jehovah's words as tools for personal gain rather than personal transformation. Refusing divine order by claiming divine blessings. These spiritual mechanisms is reprobation operates through, actually, let me pull one more to make sure we're all clear here. We'll see this in Romans 1:28. It says, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. You can't retain the husband is the head of the wife. You can't retain that in your knowledge. God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which is not convenient. So guess what they do? Turmoil in the house. All hell break loose in the house. Every time you turn around, confusion. Confusion. Why? Because he has abandoned that house. Jehovah withdraws a restraining grace when these individuals consistently choose their own interests over his truth. It's not here to play games. So when this testing process happens, we got to understand what's going on. We got to understand what we have to do. Same thing, we see this in 2 Timothy. We want to look at this 2 Timothy chapter 3. We're going to pick it up at verse 8. We're going to grab two of them from there. We're going to look at 8 and 9. It says, now Jonas and Jambres withstood Moses, the word of God. So to do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith, but they shall proceed no further, for their folly should be made known, should be manifest unto all men, as there also was. Reprobate. Many people are going to go through this. Reprobate. Ultimate spiritual reality that's going through what's happening. See, because when we contradict these things, we hold to something else that's not true. Show you why I'm saying what I'm saying, because I want to show you the legal. I'm showing you legally what's happening. Legally what's going on. In Hebrews chapter 12, picking up at verse 17, it tells you, it says, for ye know that after it, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. You can seek it carefully all you want to. Because now that reprobation represents your repentance impossibility, because the spiritual condition and capacity of this genuine change has been permanently compromised through repeated rejection of divine truth. Of divine truth. You just consistently rejected it. See, can't no man sit there and say, oh, well, do this, do that, do this, do that, do that. No, he gonna get done on it for himself. Because you're not his mate. You're not union to him to where he rules you as a slave. But you're not some trophy where he has to sit there and all you do is kick back and eat grapes. It's not that kind of world. So that ultimately reveals a reprobate condition through contradiction and claim of knowledge and demonstrate the characters, fulfilling and warning on what's going on. This is why so many people are going to bust hell wide open. This is why we have to change so much of what we do. In 2 Peter chapter 2, we're looking at 1 through 3. We're going to see something there. It says, but there were false prophets also among the people, as there were also false teachers among you, who privately shall bring damnable heresies, even denying the Lord who brought them, to bring upon themselves swift destruction. Many people are going to these marriage counseling sessions, and the first thing the man will, okay, what's this, what's that, what's this, what's that? And she tells all this stuff, he don't do that. Well, he don't do that, he don't do that. He ain't doing this, he ain't doing that. The man, she don't do this, she don't do that. All he's doing is getting all your information, based on a whole bunch of vanity, a whole bunch of nothing. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Then all those other things will be added unto you. All you need to do every day is be seeking that kingdom. But most people sit there and the first thing they want to do, they want to go after what they want to call some holy Christian men, and they dumb as a rock. Thinking they're going to give you some godly advice. Just getting in all your business. And many shall follow their peculiar ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be even spoken of. Why? They're not going in the book. And through covetousness, they shall fringe words to make merchandise of you. Yeah? What you going to do? You're going to drop them off a little bit of money. You're going to give them a little bit of money when you get that counseling. Whose judgment now for a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. In that same religion, their divorce rate is more than 75%. Go check it. Please go check it. In the Christian realm, it's more than 75%. All behind what we see on what they claim and what they profess. So a lot of people are going to be professing a lot of things, and it's not going to be happening. Just not going to happen. It's not going to happen this day or the day to come. Because its functions is going to always show it establishes divine elevation, operates not on verbal claims, but on integration of profession, knowledge and conduct with reprobation serving as the final legal verdict when integration fails under divine examination. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show it to you. I want you to see it. I want this to sink in your head for each and every one that is here. Matthew chapter 7:21, we're going to look at 7:21 to 23. It says, not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. Not everyone say that ain't going in. I've been harping on this for a minute. Why? Because we profess we know God, but in our works we deny Him. Being abominable, disobedient, and every good work, reprobate. But we profess we know God. We profess we know Him. Many will say in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in our name? And in our name we cast out devils, and in our name done many wonderful works? I want you to really pay attention to His statement already in the past and in the future. It says, then will I profess unto them. He's not going to change His statement because He can keep it the same. Because all of us working the same, being workers of iniquity. I never knew you. I want some of you guys to get this through your head. I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. I never knew you. I want you to get this through a lot of you guys' head. Because no matter what, you're not going to change your lives. I'm not here to sit there to keep telling you what we need to do, what we need to do, what we need to do, what we need to do. Got a lot of brothers not going to make it either. We sat there and told them time and time and time and time and time again, hey, it's sin for you not to be teaching because the men of the flock of His pasture are men. These men sitting back eating grapes. Oh, I got something, I'm playing something, I'm finishing up some things. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put them out there. I'm going to put them out there. I'm going to get them out there. Ain't did nothing. And when you get before Him, well, I was doing work. He going to tell you, who are you? I don't know you. These passages directly applies to preachers, church builders, where Christ is not present. Christ is not present in these men who He told you to teach His people, harboring these tokens, harboring these things and you choose not to do anything. Fleecing the church builders, purchasing planes, preachers buying them cars and houses, worldly luxuries. So these religious leaders even stands before Jehovah claiming, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in their name? If we have people here, hey, have we not did these things? But their prophecies were never commanded. Many are all going to claim they've done many wonderful works. Many going to claim that. But I want to let you know one thing. When you open your mouth and you claiming that, you saying that right before a servant of God, and he's going to hold you accountable for everything you said. Because many of you have done works of iniquity. He is not playing with you. He is not playing with any of us. So if you hear that, I never knew you, you know why. I want to show you something. I want you to understand this. We look at these contradiction triggers. It has three progressive things we got to look at. The spiritual legal justice system, where this divine law, precisely of the natural law. We want to understand first judgment, abominable. So this is a boundary violation. I want you to understand what this is. Abominable also means he who passed over. Did you know that? He who has passed over. This divine boundary of the spiritual depth reveals this coveted transgression that creates automatic spiritual consequences. It functions as the cause of Jehovah had turned his face, operating not as an emotional response, but a divine protection mechanism, where the covenant contradiction reaches abominable levels. Jehovah present, he withdraws his spiritual necessity to protect his own holiness from condemnation, in contamination. I want to show you something, just to show you what I'm talking about. I want you to see this. We're going to look at this in Genesis chapter 3, verse 23 and 24. I want you to see this. I want you to understand this real clear. In Genesis, it says, now therefore the Lord sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, sent him away from Israel, to till the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man, the male and the female, and placed in the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, with the flaming sword which turned every which way to keep the way of the tree of life. Those are messengers, chief messengers. Those flaming swords is the word of God. And that's why I sit there and I will come at anyone who chooses not to do the word of God and think I'm going to be respecter of your flesh, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to go down. So when Adam transgressed that divine boundary line of disobedience, Jehovah responded was not vindictive punishment, but it was a protective separation preventing further contamination and it was to preserve sanctity in the sacred space. So the cherubims of the flaming sword shows what we always want to remember, one thing, and we can term it a certain way: holiness enforcement. Holiness enforcement, where divine guards are stationed to maintain separation between holy and profane. The same spiritual mechanism operates when individuals become abominable through covenant transgression. Oh, we're going to do this and never do it. Oh, we're going to do it and never do it. Establishes the spiritual boundaries to protect this holiness from further defilement. Just as Adam no longer could access the tree of life after crossing their divine boundary, so those who become abominable through systematic covenant violation loses access to this divine presence of blessings. The withdrawal is not arbitrary rejection, but it's necessary protection. Both protecting Jehovah's holiness from contamination, protecting the transgressor from complete destruction that results from direct contact through divine purity and corrupted state. So when we look at this as a whole, we want to understand where I'm coming from. So this mechanism, it reveals more than what we want to see. Through the nature of holiness, requires separation from abomination. So not hatred, but it's a spiritual law where light cannot fellowship with darkness. Purity cannot coexist with corruption, or divine presence cannot dwell with covenant boundaries where systematic violations happen. So the same as the withdrawal to follow the spiritual principle that has always been established right there in the law. And you can sit there and see it here in Exodus chapter 33 and verse 20. It tells you this real clear. 32 and 20, he tells you, make it real clear. He says, "Thou canst see my face, for there shall no man, no male or female, see me and live." Because you're operating according to the flesh. The spiritual law operates with mathematical precision. It cannot coexist with violations without destroying either or violating the violator. Jehovah cannot be corrupted. The violator must be separated or consumed. So when we look at this, we got to understand what is stated and understand what's happening. So that's why you're going to always be tested in the fire, always. And it tells you this in John 6 and verse 46. It makes this clear. Have no man have seen the Father. You can't see him according to the flesh. He's invisible to you. It's like he don't even exist. So no man, no male or female have seen the Father. Saved, only he which is of the Father has seen the Father. If you're doing the works of the Father, you see the Father. He says this also in another place. You can see this in John chapter 14, in verse 10. Actually, no, before they start up here. He had to tell Philip the same thing. He said, "Have I been so long time with you, yet ye have not known me, Philip? If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. How sayest thou then, show us the Father?" Because most people can't see who God is. Because they don't know the works of God. This revealed the divine presence that dwells with the purified flesh, the covenant, that's alignment that exists. So when profession matches the performance, then the speech equals the works. The vessels has been cleansed for a separated use of being holy. So the spiritual function that covenant nullification operates, what is called a profession-performance equation. When speech of Jehovah contradicts works, the contradiction doesn't cancel out. It creates exponential offenses. Each contradictory conduct multiplies the weight of false profession, creating on what we will always see as compound blasphemy. Compound blasphemy. Let's drop down to verse 9 and see again. He that has seen me has shown us the Father. Where he's talking about, and he said, "I've been so long time with you, yet you have not known me, Philip. If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. How sayest thou then, show us the Father? Believest thou not that I am in the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the work. Believeth me that I am in the Father in me, or else believe me for the very work's sake." The same as today. The same as today. This is why so many people don't know who they actually deal with and who they're dealing with. He's letting you know who he is all the time. For the invisible things of him are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even in its eternal power and Godhead. So they are without excuse. A lot of people don't know who they're actually dealing with. This reveals its nature. So when we see this land response and this denial of what goes on, this contamination that happens. So when we're looking at this covenant, we're looking at something. I want to show you something a little bit more as we go a little bit deeper. You're looking at Leviticus chapter 18. We're going to pick it up at verse 22. We're going to see a little bit deeper on more. It says, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is an abomination." Many people are going to hold that to homosexual acts, but that's not the truth. We crossed over to the other side. We need to understand it fully. The spiritual function of lie. That. Lie. Interesting word. See, this passage reveals the depths beyond physical acts, but it encompasses the spiritual union with abomination that creates systematic defilement. Lie functions as a union, yet deceives in immortality. Defame, but when comparing spiritually, it reveals false teachers to lie with. Enter into these spiritual unions with doctrines of unrighteousness, begetting spiritual offsprings of deception, dependent on human wisdom than divine truth. So it reveals that this covenant nullification creates an environment contamination, though what we can always see and term it as spiritual fornication. Because this is who you're lying with. When those who profess Jehovah into spiritual unions with prosperity doctrines, worldly wisdom, and carnal motivation, they don't just damage their own spiritual standing, but they pollute the very ground they walk upon through systematic spiritual adultery. It's automatic. Their false profession, it creates union defilement where this deceit in the spiritual children in error while deceiving themselves and others through this condition, the spiritual condition that they have. The earthly thing becomes witness against their own false profession because they have entered into the spiritual union with abomination and with the extent beyond individual sin. They have joined themselves to systematic unrighteousness, creating what is functioned as spiritual bestiality. So when you compare these things, we understand what it does. So sin, when you see lying with mankind as with womankind, spiritually represents the confusion and roles and purpose where false teachers are attempting to usurp Jehovah's position, depending on their understanding and deceiving others about divine truth. This creates spiritual lasciviousness, where they profane sacred boundaries, defame Jehovah's character through contradictory unions in worldly systems. You see this, what goes on here. We see where these things happen. So when we understand these things in spirit, we try to coexist with that. We see where this covenant nullification, where serious spiritual crimes using Jehovah's name authorized, and he harbors claiming his character while displaying his opposite profession, his knowledge, demonstrating complete ignorance of his nature. So this creates not simply hypocrisy, but a systematic blasphemy. Eventually triggers divine, environmental, heavenly response to preserve integrity and self-truth. And I'm saying it for this reason. When you examine the Hebrew spiritual realm and understanding, we discover two complementary principles you'll never forget. You'll never forget them and understand them. Let me show it to you. We're going to look at one. We're going to go over here to Genesis. We're going to look at chapter 4, verse 10. And we see, and he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood, his lifestyle, cry unto me from the ground. Now thou art cursed from the earth, and hast opened up her mouth to receive thy brother's blood, his lifestyle, from thy power. I want to explain something, but we're going to pull up something else, but we want to get something, I probably want a parable to where we can get it. We're going to see this in Job, Job 16:18. O earth, cover not thou my blood, my lifestyle, and let my cry have no place. What is it saying? I want you to understand this and never forget it. This is not an example of the earth vomiting out inhabitants about the earth, but it's preserving evidence of righteousness and calling divine intervention. So not righteous, so when you're looking at the righteous life, cannot be extinguished without Jehovah's taking notice. So the very soil records and reports it. That's why I said the heaven and earth record this day against you. So it reports the violation of the heavenly courts. So the earth that responded to Cain withholding his strength was not a rejection of Abel, but the punishment upon immoral acts of violence and righteousness. So when thou tillest the ground, it should not yield forth her strength. That's what this is getting into. I want to do this parable, and we're going to get on up out of here. I need to do this parable here. Let me sit there and see if I can. It's pretty short. Let me see here. I'm going to do this parable here. Let's do this parable here and get this. Make sure we good. Okay. It's right here. Okay, the parable of the orchard keeper and the fig trees. It says, there was a certain man who planted an orchard and set therein many fig trees, each bearing fruit according to his kind. He appointed 2 keepers over the orchard, giving them charge to tend to the trees, gathering fruits for his household. Now among the fig trees, one that bore exceedingly sweet fruit, and his branches were heavy with figs and fed many of the poor, who came seeking subsistence, and the tree was beloved of his keeper, whose name was Abel. Keep that in mind. But the other keeper, whose name Cain, looked upon the fruit trees and with envy, and who bore the trees less abundantly, but the people praised Abel's trees above his own. So as it came to pass, Cain, in his wrath, he took an axe and cut down Abel's fruit trees, causing the sap to flow upon the ground like the blood from a wounded creature. But lo, when the sap of the righteous tree touched the earth, the soil began to cry out with a voice and arose to heaven, saying, remember the life of the fruitful trees have been cut short. Justice for the tree that feeds the hungry. And the earth opened up his mouth and received the sap of the righteous tree, but would not let it be covered over the forgotten. Instead, the ground preserved every drop as a testimony, and the cry went up continually before the throne of the orchard owners. And when the owner came to visit the orchard, he heard the cry from the ground and said unto Cain, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother tree cries unto me from the ground. Cain answered, am I my brother's keeper? I know not what came of his tree. And the owner said, the tree itself bear witness against thee. For it has preserved the testimony of the righteous tree, life, and will not be silent concerning thy deed. It's actually telling you something that's seriously deep. But we're going to get into it. And it says, from this day forward, when Cain attempted to tend to the remaining trees of the earth, they would not cooperate with his efforts. The soil that once yielded abundantly now withheld its strength from him. The tree grew weak and the fruit became bitter. The earth remembered the violence done to the righteous tree and would not give its full cooperation, and the one who had destroyed the fruitfulness. Though Cain planted new trees and labored with great effort, and the ground remained restrained the work, the very soil withdraw his friendship from the one who had spilled the righteous sap on it. So now we're going to look at the parable of the fisherman. I need to put these two together where we can get it. And then there was a certain village where the sea, and with two fishermen. One cast their nets into the same waters, and the other righteous, in dealing with whose name was Nathan, sharing his catch. And the widows, with the widows, the fatherless, according to the law. One of the fishermen, whose name was Judas, grew envious of Nathan's success. And the people loved for him. For Nathan's nets were always full, and the fish were the finest in the market. And it came to pass when Judas, in his jealousy, bound stones to Nathan's feet, and cast him into the deep waters, thinking he can rid him of the rivaling forever. But when Nathan's life departed, the life mingled with the waters, the very sea began to testify the deed, and the waves cried every shore, and the waters would not be silent. Even the fish bore witness, for they would no longer come to Judas' nets as they had before. The sea had become as a court of testimony, preserving the evidence in the violence done to the righteous. And when the elders of the village came seeking Nathan, the very water seemed to whisper his name. And tides brought to the shores evidence of Judas' crime. From that day, though Judas cast his nets into the great lake with great labor, the sea withheld its bounty from him. The fish avoided his nets if they knew the violence his hand had done to their former friend. The waters that once yield abundantly to their nets now seemed to resist his efforts, and the sea itself had become a witness against him, remembering the righteous blood that has been spilled in the depths. And this is the principle on what we're getting into. And the principle is creation testimony. When righteousness is violently destroyed, creation itself becomes a witness, preserving evidence and crying out justice. The very element, soil, sap, water, creatures, bear testimony before Jehovah's throne. We're going to get into what this is actually saying. In the principle of the divine recording, no righteous life can distinguish out Jehovah's taking notice of creation, serves as this recording system, preserving the very act of violence against innocence. The principle of creation resistance, the natural world withdraws its corporation from those who shed righteous blood, making their labors difficult and their harvest lean in divine punishment. The principle of testimony is preservation. Unlike man's witness, who may be silent, creation testimony endures forever. Continually crying out until justice is served, these parables reveal how Jehovah has programmed creation itself to preserve as a witness, judge, executor in divine judgment, ensuring that violence against righteous never goes unnoticed or unpunished. That you need to take a picture of, because this is actually going to tell you a lot of stuff that's going on. And I'm going to tell you why this is so important. Because we're going to see what happens here. And when you see where the earth rejections, I want you to understand something where we was in Leviticus. And this is what we was talking about. Leviticus 18:22. We're going to look at 25 to 28. It says, "And the land is defiled, therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomit out her inhabitants. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgment, and shall not commit any of the abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourn among you. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. The land spew not you out also. When you are defiled, it spewed out the nations that were before you." So let's unpack this, and we're gonna find out exactly what's going on. And this is the reason why heaven and earth record against us, because it reveals the abominations that is here in this land. So when we're looking at the Hebrew culture, understanding, I want you to clearly understand what I'm getting ready to tell you. If not, you need to clip it, because we got to understand vomit. Forcefully on what vomit is. It's a forceful, involuntary removal. It established a term which we call land consciousness. Land conscious. So when we understand that, the divinely programmed expulsion mechanism, that we have run into these divine abominations, what we see here. This is where our issue is. Meaning this, it's not a passive active rejection, but it's the same thing as the human body will involuntarily expel toxin to preserve life. So as the land expels those same practices of abominations, we see what's happening where you had a spiritual integrity of what's going on. But it demonstrates the creation itself that has been programmed in the boundary, and it cannot be violated without consequences. Most people don't even know what I'm saying, but I'm finna explain it to you now. The reason why we had a problem we have today, because the spiritual depth and the principles are made known. They are manifest with modern age today. And what I'm saying, I'm going to explain it to you. And it's called environmental retaliation. Environmental retaliation. Why? Because now even we have farmers who use toxins, not only on animals, but also on vegetables. So when men do GMO manipulation, corrupt the natural order that Jehovah have already established, the earth will respond with the consequences that would affect both males and females, including even the pets. Meaning this, the land is defiled by chemicals, contaminations through man manipulation and genetic manipulation on what they did. So it begins to vomit out its strength, which is in the food that it produces for us. So they use systematic poisoning to manifest now on what you see in us. So what it's saying is, what they had did, they contaminated the land. So since they contaminated the land, it's systematic poisoning. It manifests, so now it's made known. This is why you got high blood pressure. It's coming from foods you're eating. Foods that you're eating. That's where it's coming from. You have cancer. Why? It's coming from things and foods that you're eating. Heart attacks, strokes, blindness, diabetes. All these things comes from what we see. The earth involuntarily responds to these spiritual and physical defilements imposed upon it. So they are not random crises, but they're environmental testimonies where creation itself bears witness against man's corruption in divine design. That's what this has done. So everything we see, even the water, Jehovah had created water to sustain life, but it has been corrupted. Now they use reverse osmosis processes, which is what they do. They strip down all the vitamins and minerals, and now you get it to where it's below, at the pH level below 6. And what happens? Now that water becomes toxic to your body, stripping away all the essential vitamins and minerals needed, and then they try to replace it with their own. So this water cannot be rendered its strength as maintaining the body, because it's representing what a term is also because it's creation sabotage, is what they have done. So man attempts to purify, but they actually create toxicity, which is weakens rather than strengthens. So this is why we have the problem we have today. So Jehovah's law and integration, and he integrated this into creation itself, which we'll see where spiritual abominations are practiced, so the spiritual environment, so it responds with the physical consequences in people when they do that. So these natural orders corrupt through which chemical and genetic manipulation, the land withdraws its life-giving strength of producing foods and water that no longer nourishes, but instead it poisons those who consume them. So this demonstrates the land conscious, where it operates on multiple levels, responding now to the defilement through abominable practices of these physical defilement through toxic contamination. Creation itself becomes now a witness against man, and systematic violations of this divine order, manifesting the consequences through environmental toxicity. And it mirrors the spiritual toxicity of those who defile Jehovah's creation and their abominable conduct of what's going on. So what I'm trying to get you guys to see and really understand is what I've been saying the entire time. Now, I said this a couple of times as we closing this down. Remember this in Deuteronomy 30 and 19. Never forget this, and this is always there. It says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you. It's not for you, it's against you. I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and thy seed may live. You see it here. It's right there. And the reason why we have noticed all we're going to play on is when you're looking at Numbers 32 and 23, you'll see this here. This is all law that we're looking at right now. 32 and 23, it tells us very clear here. It says, but if you will not do so, remember ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sins will find you out. Why? Because heaven and earth record this day against us. So as we coming down to this, we got to remember a couple of things, and we got to remember these couple of things and never forget them. So when we're looking at these Prophetiteering people, they establish these things, and they come in all shapes, forms, and fashions. And we got to remember, the word cannot be commercialized. It cannot be commercialized. So write these down and keep them with you. We're looking at Matthew chapter 10 and verse 8. It tells you, heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, and raise the dead. Cast out devils. Freely ye have received, freely give. You understand that? Keep that with you. Keep that with you always. So when you sit there and see this, they profess they know God, but in works they deny him. Always keep that in mind. Never forget it. Never forget it. So hopefully that as we continually go through here, let this be your shield. True servants reflect the character through their conduct. You see it through their knowledge that they have, that they possess. And when you run into ones that's like that, you see who they are. You see what they're about. You see who they are. 1 Timothy chapter 6, and tells you in verse 5, it tells you this. When they perverse disputing of men, corrupt minds, destitute of the truth, supposing gain is godliness, from such withdraw thyself. Because the true followers of Christ knows his voice. Knows his voice. True followers. John 10:27. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. So hopefully you understand what these true profiteers are about. They always are out there. They always will be out there to do you in. So hopefully that you remember this. You put it inside, because this thing is put against us. And we have a great work to go against, and as we continually move forward. So with that, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So give us some time in the back as we go back there. We're going to have we're going to split it back there. So I really need Deacon Khalil back there to make sure we get it all right. But we're going to have we're going to split it because we have some important announcements that's really important we have to make. And we also have the children's class going to be going on in another one. Then when they finish up, they can come over. But we need to make sure that everything is going smooth. So we're going to make sure that that's happening. So you guys see the link that's there, and you guys are welcome to come back there to get those important announcements, as I said, we will be looking at these, going at this where we have this blockchain. This is for the men. We have some women joining in some of the studies of this to where we go through it. And I was asked to where can the elder's wife be part of that? And by all means they can, because the word can go into anybody, and we have a lot of women who do have the hunger. So that I don't mind doing. But then we're going to have a panel where we'll be going live, and those are where they won't be. But based on our studies, they will be. So I have no problem with that. But the main thing is, there's a reason to be very afraid. This is not talking about our people, but this is talking about all these false religions that's out there, because it's a way what we're getting ready to do to where they cannot get around. It's going to be technically impossible for them to get around this from here out. So hopefully you guys will do that. And as I said, we will be going, we got some announcements that's going to go on back there. And we have the children's class going to be going on back there. So we're going to have two different areas going on at the same time. So I say with each and every person, you know, we do have, on tomorrow we have Deacon Hicks going to be cranking out, as well as Deacon Sampson. As they'll be starting on tomorrow, on the first day of the week, we'll be moving forward. But hopefully, you know, we made the adjustments. And so I say until we meet again, until we can go deeper into what we want to do, I invite each and every person to come into the Zoom, have your questions, but make sure that they are substantial and they can be substantiated, not just back there asking little bitty questions. So I say until you guys, until next time, to each and every one, shalom.
Still can't grasp the fact that you want to be